So I get the honor to interview Anderson. And how often do you get interviewed a lot? Or are you on the other side?
Not very much, no.
Not very much.
Yeah,
Good.
Yeah.
Well, I'm really excited for this, and
there's probably a reason for that too.
we'll determine that after this. Actually,
yeah.
we'll probably have a better sense of that. But we asked everybody who is coming to suggest questions for you. Mm-hmm. And there were some questions I cannot repeat here.
Okay.
And shan't. But no, most of the questions are good.
I'm up for anything.
A few about you as a dog owner and other things. But the main one that people wanted to know was how do you maintain equanimity in the current role that you're in?
Right.
And you're interviewing people. People could be telling you the truth. They could be spinning. We don't always know. But how do you maintain your own equanimity in kind of a high pressure, breaking news, intense?
Yeah, I'm heavily medicated, so I really have no idea where I am at any given moment. Not exactly sure who you all are, but it seems nice. No, I'm kidding. Not heavily medicated or medicated at all, really. Maybe a little, but not really. I've been doing this for, I'm 51 now. I started when I was 22, 23, and I don't know. I'm used to this. I mean, this is what I do, and I like not being a person who takes a side, and wears my politics on my sleeve. I think there's plenty of channels for that, and whether it's on the left or the right, and there's very talented people who do that. I don't want to do that. It just didn't interest me as a reporter to do that. I believe viewers are smart enough to make up their own mind, and they don't need an overpaid, blow-dried anchor telling them what to think or who to vote for. I think people want facts, and armed with that they can make up their own mind. So I view my job as, seeking out facts, trying to understand what's true and what's not, particularly in this environment. And then traditionally as a correspondent, I always viewed my job as bearing witness to things that were happening around the world and shining a light in darkness, or bearing witness to the struggles of people and of kind of walking in somebody else's shoes. And I do think for me, there's always been great understanding about my own life and other people's lives that's come from listening to other people and trying to walk in their shoes. And so that's why, I loved what we were talking about before, just the power of listening, because I do think it's by learning other people's stories, it's one way to make sense of your own story.
Yeah. And was that kind of a bridge for mindfulness for you? That I already have this experience. I know what it's like to actually be present for somebody else. What are other ways I can cultivate that?
My interest started in mindfulness. I did a story for 60 Minutes about John, and that's how I met you. And, so I went out to a retreat in California, and I lasted, I think it was a day and a half, when I got called away. I don't know if you remember, I can't even remember the guy's name.
Former LA Clippers owner.
Yeah, the guy who owned the LA Clippers, who was recorded saying terrible things and racist things, and he, for some reason, agreed to do an interview with me because he thought it would be better to keep talking. And so I actually left this retreat and went to perhaps one of the least mindful persons I have met in a long time. And I did an interview with him. In fact, I think one of the lines, one of the main things I remember he said was something along the lines of, "What has Magic Johnson ever done other than get AIDS?" And I was like,
"Whoa."
What do you say to that? We ended up doing this piece for 60 Minutes, and I'd always been interested in the idea of meditation and Buddhism, and I'd read stuff, but everything I read, I'd sort of, I'd get to like the Sanskrit words, and my mind would wander somewhere else, and it just never really connected, but I really liked John, and I liked what I had seen of this retreat, so I just went back on my own to do a retreat, and that's what really got me interested. I started reading a lot of John's works, and I realized, I think what called me to it is that I felt like I had spent 20 years, I've spent 20 years, say 18 years as a reporter, and I've been to extraordinary places and had the privilege of had the painful privilege at times of meeting people in the worst time of their life and had these transformative experiences, but often I felt like I'm not present. I just feel like I've gone to a place, and it's only in retrospect that I sort of realize what an incredible thing that was. And oftentimes I would find myself flying into a country, but I was already thinking about the next place I was going to go to because I'd already worked out in my head what I was going to do for those 3 days on the ground in Mogadishu. Then I was thinking, okay, what am I going to do when I get to Rwanda? So I just kind of felt like my life is passing before me and I'm not fully there for it. And I want to be. And my dad died when he was 50 years old, when I was 10. And because I always thought I'll be dead by 50. So I want to be present. And one of the things John said early on at the retreat he was in, which was like, everyone wants to live longer. And until there's, some easy way to actually live longer beyond exercising and eating right, that this is actually a way to live longer because you are actually more present for each of the moments of your life. Your day is actually fuller, and you have lived a longer day because you are there. It's not like that feeling when you're driving in a car and you get to the destination 2 hours later and you have no memory of the drive at all. And I feel a lot of my life has been like that. Yeah. And I didn't want it to be like that any longer.
Yeah. You talked sometimes about noticing the voice in the head. And I'm curious, because most people actually don't know there's a voice in the head. That's just me, right? Like, oh, and that awareness that there's a thought pattern or an identity or a story that's happening, is that something you were always aware of? Or is that something that mindfulness began to realize, wow, I have my own experience, but then there's also this narrative that's going on?
Yeah, the whole idea of a narrative is something that's really has fascinated me for a long time. I wrote a book, my first book in 2005, and I had kind of been writing it in my head for a long time, and I realized like I'd been working on my own narrative for a long time, and I think I once read that that's one thing that for PTSD the military was experimenting with, which was as somebody's tour of duty was ending overseas, they would have psychologists in the field talk to somebody about creating a narrative about their experience. So they had a way of framing their experience that made it make sense in some way. And I think, my dad died when I was a kid. My brother died by suicide when I was 21, and he was 23. He killed himself in front of my mom. And so for a long time, I was trying to make sense out of these things that had happened, things which fundamentally may not make sense, or there may not be an answer to, you ask why something happens like that, there may not be an answer to that question. And so the whole notion of kind of coming to live in a world without why was something I struggled with for a long time and searched for a long time. That's really what led me to go overseas and start going to places where life and death was very real and where people were experiencing traumas and spoke the language of loss, because I wanted to be around other people who spoke the language of loss and who had survived so I could learn how to survive.
Well, do you think also there was something about the war zones, everyone was brought into the presence through unfortunate conditions, but was there something about an aliveness there?
Yeah, I think it felt more alive. I mean, which is, obviously with the closeness of death, yes, you see life and death, and it's not packaged and people aren't made up and made to look like pretty in a coffin. And in movies somebody gets shot and it's slow motion and the world stops spinning for a while. I started traveling. I snuck into Burma. I hooked up with some students fighting the Burmese government. I shot a story about them. Ended up in Somalia in the early days of a famine in August of '92. And it's the first time I saw a child die. I cannot tell you how many, children I've seen die or adults I've seen die. I mean, I was the first team on the ground after the earthquake in Haiti, where 200-some thousand Haitians had died in the earthquake. And, they were all over, and there was no place to bury them, and they were picked up in dump trucks and literally dumped outside of town. And so it just makes regular life seem meaningless and dull. And the more it's not that I enjoy it. The more I'm away, the more I want to be back home. But to be quite frankly, the more you do it, the harder it is to be back home. And when you get back home, you're here for a day or two, and you walk into a supermarket and there's cold air blowing on the vegetables, and there's too many choices, and all you want to do is just get back on a plane and go somewhere else. And so I struggled with that for a long, long time. And I think mindfulness has helped me cope with that.
And do you think there's a particular way that John has introduced it that somehow hit in ways that...
Yeah, I do. I mean, I do think, first of all, I mean, John knows lots of Sanskrit terms, but he doesn't seem to use them to the point where my mind goes blank. But just the way I mean, first of all, I think he's a brilliant man, but the way he and his son just talk about things and talk about mindfulness, and then just sort of live it in their own lives and exude it, I really like it. And it's not sort of an obnoxious, like quite frankly, I have met some people in the mindfulness world who John says, like,
you can talk.
You don't need to talk about it. Like, it's like Fight Club. You don't need to talk about Fight Club. You just kind of do it. You don't need to tell everybody, I'm doing this. I'm practicing for 20 hours a day, and and it becomes this thing that you should do. And soon Lululemon is going to start selling mindfulness pants. And it's one of the things I like about John. It's just like, well, it shouldn't be another should in your life. And if it becomes a should in your life, don't do it, but you don't need to talk about it with everybody. Like, if you're going to do it. And if it works for you, that's great. And just also that many things can become a meditation. That's been something that's been really important to me. The idea, there have been long periods of time where I'll sit for, 20 or 30 minutes 2 or 3 times a day and do all the stuff that I am trying to get better at doing. And then there's times where I'll lapse and I won't do that, but it still is with me every single day. And I'll find myself, so now I try to only, I don't multitask. I now try to monotask. I don't even know if that's a word, but I try to monotask. I only do one thing at a time. So if I'm walking down the street, I try to be walking down the street. And I try to feel my feet walking down the street. I try to feel the breeze on me. I try to be aware of people passing me by, and it's usually pretty easy because they're usually saying hi to me or talking to me or taking a picture of me. But I just pretend that's because I know them somehow, and my memory is so bad. I greet everybody with equal enthusiasm because my memory is so bad. I have no idea if I actually do know them or if I'm in a car, I try not to be riding in a car and on my phone. I try to be riding in a car, in an Uber, going to work, and looking out the window and seeing things pass by. And just all those things become meditations in a way. And I don't want to cheapen the idea of meditation because obviously there's great value in sitting and devoting. But even if it's, minutes or 2 or here or there, I find it just like returning to my breath in a car for 2 minutes makes a difference in my life. And certainly getting off Twitter. One of the things John talks about is, and I hate to keep quoting John as if he's like a cult leader, because it's certainly not that at all. But I just think he's such a remarkable guy, and just he just lives this in a way that I aspire to. I aspire to be more like him. One of the things, the visuals that he had talked about that really registered for me early on was, we have this like cascading thoughts constantly, like a waterfall. And there's something about meditation, which is like walking through the waterfall and turning around and looking out through, like you're in the space behind the waterfall, and you're seeing this cascade of thoughts. You're not able to stop the stream, but you're able to observe the stream and sort of see it for what it is and let it flow out. And that's literally an image I think about a lot. And I think, like, in this world of Twitter is this just stream of crap that is just constantly streaming that for a long time I thought I needed to keep up with. And I I can't tell you the last time I tweeted something, and if I did, it was probably just like a retweet of somebody else, but I don't want to participate in it anymore. Like, I just don't want to be part of that, and no good comes of it, and you can destroy your career, and it's also just, you just feel gross. You just feel like, oh my God, I've got to respond and see what the latest thing is being talked about on social media by somebody whose picture is an egg. It doesn't really make much sense.
Well, I wonder too how it feels. So when I mention to people that we're doing this event, it's interesting. Almost everybody, at least in my world, is like, "Oh, Anderson Cooper! I love Anderson Cooper." Particularly women. I don't know what the connection is there, but
we can have some great conversation.
And so I wonder what it's like to both have that experience of being admired and to also be in a situation where there's other people who we might not need to name who are creating a lot of negativity towards you and a lot of hate actually towards you. And how do you as a public figure, how do you live with that? Do you kind of let that go as just a thought?
Yeah, it's interesting. The whole being a public figure thing, like early on when it starts, I grew up, my mom was famous growing up, so I was sort of used to that. I was used to people on the street taking pictures or talking to her or whatever, and or reading about, my parents in the paper. And I grew up around a lot of famous people. So early on, I realized that they are, if not more fucked up, they're at least as fucked up as everybody else. And that was actually incredibly freeing in a weird way because, a lot of people grow up aspiring to be famous, thinking that it's going to solve their problems and somehow. In fact, it's just going to amplify your problems. It's going to get your problems on the cover of People magazine, but that's not going to help that's not going to solve your problem.
Right. This is breaking news.
That's right.
Success does not.
So that was actually kind of freeing for me as a kid, sort of like, oh, and the irony is I ended up in a profession that I was on TV, and because of the way things work, people wanted to know more about me, and I became well-known and recognizable, and I'm, the palest person on the planet, so I stand out. I'm like, you open up a rock, and there's like a blind albino salamander, and that's what I pretty much look like. That's never seen the light of day. But what was the question? So...
How does it feel like to be a salamander, I think, or something around that direction?
Something about being famous?
Something about being famous and also,
and having people hate me, too.
Yeah, it was increased in recent years.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. It's interesting to have people make judgments based on what they think you are or who they think you are. What they believe your politics are. There's, I think some people would be surprised who I might vote for or what I might think about things, but people make assumptions based on some interview that they've seen me give. Usually if it's a tough interview I've done with a conservative politician, then people will assume I'm a liberal. If I've just given a tough interview with Debbie Wasserman Schultz from the who was the DNC, I'll get kudos from conservatives and hate tweets from liberals. And I just stopped paying attention. I really, when I first started getting well known, it's very hard not to pay attention. It's very hard not to look at your ratings. It's very hard not to look at the metrics by which you're being judged and try to, be worried about it. At a certain point, like, I literally can say I do not worry about it. I'm sure, I know there's people within my company who worry about it, and God bless them, and I'm sorry that they have that as their responsibility, but it doesn't help me do my job any better. And thinking about myself as a public figure does not help me do my job. What helps me do my job is feeling like I can blend in with anybody, feeling like I can walk into a room and make a contact with somebody on a human level, and I can walk in their shoes and listen to them, and that's what I want to do. Sometimes it's aided by the fact that I'm well known, so I get access to a place that I might not. Sometimes it's hurt by that because somebody has formed an opinion of me that may be accurate, but it may be not. It was interesting just last night, talking about, last night I happened to go, Instagram is kind of the only social media thing I still check because I'm vain and I like to look at pictures of myself. And I looked at my DMs and somebody had DM'd me. It was a picture of their grandfather watching me on TV, and this person had said, my 87-year-old grandfather just called Anderson Cooper a faggot. and then he put like smiley haha faces. And I get that stuff. I mean, I get those daily. I mean, that's not a surprise to me. For some reason, that in that moment, like, I was like, let's fuck with this guy. So I screen grabbed it and I put it on my Instagram story and I put it up there, and he had conveniently put his Instagram tag on it, and he clearly wanted me to see it. Right. And normally I would not engage with the person or do anything about it or report them, because I'm like, why even waste a moment of your life? Right. But I don't know, for some reason I was just in a mood and I did, and I posted it, and within 20 seconds I had hundreds of people saying, oh, I'm so sorry you got that, we love you, blah blah blah. And then the guy took his account down and disappeared off, and I think the account was linked to his business, so I may have hurt his business a little bit because he no longer has his business account on Instagram, but that's okay. But
does it hurt?
Is that okay, John? I'm not being very mindful. That's not.
But does it?
Not being very compassionate, am I? Or trying to understand him.
You had also mentioned sometimes people ask you for your photographs, and if you don't want to take it.
Oh, well, that's what's funny. Yeah. So I'll people talk to me all day long, and this may sound odd, but I am painfully introverted. I'm very shy. I know it's weird I'm on TV, but TV is very intimate. It's just a little piece of glass you're talking to in a dark room. I forced myself to start doing events like this in front of a crowd years ago because it was the last thing that made me nervous, and now I genuinely enjoy it. But it is not natural for me, and I will go home and I will take a nap. I mean, I can't today because I'm working, but I would, if I could, I would immediately go home right now and take a nap and sort of regroup. So people talk to me all day long, and as I said, I engage with everybody with equal enthusiasm. But like if I'm in a bar with some friends or in a restaurant late at night, and some people want to take a selfie with me, usually I'll say, you know what, if I do it with you, like 20 other people are going to ask, and that's all I'm going to be doing tonight is taking selfies, and I want to sound like a jerk. I would normally totally do this, but we're in a confined space. How about you and I just talk? Like, what's your name? And nobody actually wants to talk to me. It's fascinating. And literally you can see their faces drop, and they look at me incredulous, and they're like, no, and they leave. And so it's really fascinating. I mean, I literally am like, hi, I'm Anderson. What's your name? Where are you from? And they're just like, you know what? Nah. So that's okay too.
But does that hurt? Does that hurt?
No. I mean, the last thing I need is to like have another conversation with somebody. So exactly. I'm fine. But it's more about them. I just find it an interesting sociological phenomenon that unless there's a photograph now, it's not a real interaction.
Yeah, that is sad.
And in my opinion, if there is a photograph, it's less of, unless we've actually had an interaction. I'm always skeptical, like on Instagram, you see all these people like on the beach in Mykonos, and they're all in a group and they're all taking pictures. I'm like, if you're having that good a time on the beach in Mykonos, why are you stopping to take a picture and to tell everybody else? To me, it's all about exclusion. It's that you're having a good time or want people to think you're having a good time. But more importantly, you want everybody else to know who's not there that you're having a better time and are doing funner things than what they're doing in their silly lives.
Yeah,
that's how I view Instagram.
Okay, I guess for me, if I was in your position and people came up and were like, oh, and they didn't, I would feel like not seen in the world. I would feel like, wow, can't people just see me for who I am?
Oh, I don't care about that.
You don't.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I mean, why? If it's some person I'm never going to see again, and I have, I'm sure they're a nice person, but I don't need them to see me. Like, I don't need. I got a lot of people seeing me. I would like my friends to know me, and but I don't feel. I did a story on Danny Meyer, a famous restaurateur. He's a lovely guy who owns a bunch of restaurants in New York. And one of the things he said to me has always stuck with me because it's so foreign to my thinking, but it makes total sense. He said he thinks a lot about hospitality. One of the things he said is that everybody in the world has a invisible sign on them that says, make me feel important. Everybody wants to feel important in their own way. However, and feeling important may mean different things to one person. For some person at Danny's restaurant, it means they want to sit at the table and not be bothered and fall into conversation with the waiter. For somebody at a table, the person at that table wants to go on and on about their extensive knowledge of wine to the waiter, and it's the waiter's job to encourage that and listen. So everybody has a different way of feeling important. I had never really, I mean, and maybe it seems obvious to you, but like, I realize, I have people looking at me and taking pictures of me, and it's very easy to start to feel important in a ridiculous way. And I thankfully, because I've seen it from the time I was a little kid, I realize how ridiculous it is and meaningless it is, and it is not the road to happiness. It's anything, it's just the road to ruin and becoming a monster and an egotistical person who speaks about themselves in the third person. So let me tell you a little bit about Anderson Cooper. But it's been helpful for me because I am so introverted. The notion to realize everyone wants to feel important. So it doesn't come naturally because naturally I'm too shy to talk to people. But I now make the effort to look somebody in the eye, ask them their name, and say, what do you do? Or whatever conversation I can make with somebody. So I'm more interested in letting somebody know that I see them.
Yeah.
Whether they see me or what they think they see in me doesn't really matter. They don't have to see the real me.
Right. Okay.
I'm cool with that.
Good. Just checking. I'm still working on it.
I think it's more about you, Soren.
Yeah, it is about me.
Yeah.
As we know, most questions are self-referential.
I see you, Soren.
Thank you.
I see you.
Thank you. So we're just about out of time, but any... I'm not avoiding this feeling, I don't think. Am I avoiding something right now?
You just wanted a picture, didn't you?
I did.
Just...
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. We got our selfie. It's getting posted right now. Yeah. You turned 50. I know we're just about out of time, but I turned 50 recently. You turned 51. What is kind of what you're seeing ahead? What you're excited about? What is any...
Soren and I were talking about this backstage. For me, turning 50 was a huge deal. I said my dad died at 50. A lot of people in his family died very early of heart disease. From the time I was a little kid, I thought I'm going to die at 52, or 50 as well, and that I need to pack a lot in before 50. And so that's what I did. I decided to pack a lot in. I was told by my doctor that I've had all the heart tests and everything seems good and knock on wood. And my doctor was like, you're actually going to be alive for quite a lot longer. And I was like, well, what do I do? Like I have no plan. Like I had a plan and now I have no plan. Yeah. And it's a very strange thing to figure out. I mean, you read about people having a midlife crisis, and I guess this is what this is, and it's, I don't know what the second act is, or I want there to be a second or third act, I love what I do, and I've loved almost every second of it, and I have no actual skills, so there's nothing else I can do. But it's a very strange time. And mindfulness has helped with that, of sort of just, observing that and being mindful of it and seeing the feelings and understanding the fear of it and knowing where it comes from and kind of listening to your breath and seeing what happens. And not in a kind of, not in a non-active way. I don't think mindfulness means like just observing passive. Not being passive and stuff, or being passive. I don't think that's what it is, but it is. It's a really interesting time, and so I don't know what the second act is going to be, and I have, I really am not even sure how to figure out what the second act is going to be, and if everybody has any ideas, just tweet me and I won't read it.
Well, I hope you keep coming back here and we can continue to follow you.
I love coming here.
Thank you for joining and participating.
Thanks for all you do. Thank you very much.